Ladies, gentlemen, and all you tactically astute greyhounds, as always, I am Cosmic, and today we're going to be reviewing Tastee Lethal Tactics, which was developed and published by Skybox Labs. Tastee is a phase-based tactics game very similar in mechanical style to that of Frozen Synapse, which was a tactics game I loved when that came out. The game places you in the role of a director of a ragtag band of mercenaries. Now, the cast of mercenaries themselves is quite diverse. There's a lot of humour involved with the mercenaries themselves, whether it be their appearance or their actual personality, and indeed there is a great array of references to various pop culture and video games that adds a really nice humorous tone to the overall feel of the game. Tastee contains both single player and multiplayer modes, and the single player itself works from a campaign map that essentially you pick your chosen mission and then you try to complete that chosen mission. Characters can die, however there is no permadeath, they just get taken out of that specific mission for the time period that they have died, and it works pretty similar to a lot of other strategy games in that it is a very basic strategy map. There's not too much in terms of macro management. It's essentially you pick your squad and then you enter battle. Mechanically, the combat in Tastee is sublime. It works very similar to Frozen Synapse in that you have a planning phase in which you can issue orders to your team, and then you can actually preview your orders to see how in theory it will turn out. It won't always be the case because you can't see the actual enemy movement or what the enemy will do in that time frame, but you can get a rough estimation of what will happen once you commit orders. Now, once you've actually committed those orders, it's a case of seeing what happens and adjusting accordingly. It's more about a proactive strategy rather than reactionary tactics, because after all, you kind of have to guess your way through using, all the cover and the various obstacles, and almost using your strategy and tactical astuteness to find a way for all your troops to survive, all the while trying to analyze where the enemy will be and make sure that your soldiers are in good positions for taking that enemy down without actually being able to see their movement patterns, etc, etc. The major problem with the combat itself doesn't come in form of the mechanics. In fact, the mechanics are absolutely almost flawless and they work really, really well. The problem is that the game doesn't really transfer knowledge of those mechanics over to the player particularly well. The tutorial is very basic and there's a lot of nuanced ideas in the actual combat itself that don't really translate in the actual tutorial themselves. Not only this, but the user interface doesn't really help the player in any particular way. It isn't particularly intuitive in terms of the controls, mainly because you can make mistakes very easily just for the fact that there's no real good way to cancel actions. For example, if you put a character to shoot something but then decide to change, so you delete the waypoint, you can actually still have that particular action in play without noticing, because the icon for that action is so small and the delete icon for that action is so small, and it can just be passed over sometimes, which is a little bit annoying, especially when it can cause you to make a really grievous error and get one of your commandos essentially killed. Other than that, it works really well. Like I said, the first phase is the planning phase, so you get to preview your actions, and then once you've committed orders, you are committed. There is no going back from that point. So if one of your characters dies, you can restart the entire level. However, I wouldn't recommend it. I think going through and regardless of what happens is a lot more fun, and once you've committed to a round, then it plays out and you get to see what the results were. The great thing about the combat that Tastee holds that other games in the genre don't hold, like Frozen Synapse, is the diverse character abilities of the mercenaries themselves. So some mercenaries are able to have grenade launchers, some mercenaries can do other things like snipers and gunmen and all this kind of thing. There's a lot of fun. Shotguns in particular are my favorite, just for the damage that they do to the enemy in close quarters. These character abilities in turn add a tactical depth to the game that something like Frozen Synapse did not have, and it means that you can not only plan the best way to kind of protect your troops and take down the enemy, but it's also about utilizing specific characters due to their abilities in specific situations to utilize them for the best outcome. Now, the single player itself contains over 30 missions, but what really stands out about those missions, and indeed of the multiplayer, is the map design. Now, sadly, there is only 10 randomized tactical maps. However, the map design works really well. There are really nice locations, but not only the nice locations, but there's a great array of destructible environmental objects that you can utilize to gain the surprise on the enemy. And there's just the maps are designed in a way that really complements the style of mechanical gameplay that Tastee wants to provide. For me personally, the multiplayer was the most fun, and I think that if the game had retained a strong multiplayer player base, then the longevity of this game would skyrocket. But sadly, the multiplayer can be a bit devoid of life at times, and it can be difficult to find a match in certain time zones, in certain time periods, which is a massive shame, because the multiplayer is the most fun by far. Facing down a human opponent in this style of mechanical tactical gameplay is so much fun. And I wish that the developers would release maybe some DLC to really breathe life back into that multiplayer, because it is worth exploring. Overall, I feel that Tastee is a really fantastic game for what it tries to provide. It's essentially Frozen Synapse with an added tactical depth to the game, and with some really nice humorous tones and some nice stylized graphics in there. I think that if you enjoyed games like Frozen Synapse, this is definitely worth a pick up. It does have a few issues here and there, particularly in the form of its controls and user interface, but they are negligible at best. The maps and destructible environments really are a lot of fun, and the multiplayer is probably the standout focus for the game, but sadly it didn't really pick up a strong player base. It is well worth a try if you are looking for that kind of game, and I think that the developers have done a fantastic job implementing all the different aspects of the game. So that's my review of Tastee Lethal Tactics. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Do like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and I will see you next time.